Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something practical, how you can take all that stuff you already enjoy, movies, books, music, and actually use it.
Right, stop just passively consuming it.
Exactly. Turn it into a powerful tool for learning a language. We're exploring the art of authentic input today, making learning feel less like work and honestly more fun, and embedding it right into your life.
And that shift from passive to active, it's absolutely fundamental because the research we looked at, it's pretty unanimous. Success for adult language learners isn't really about some vague innate talent.
Not the language gene, though.
Not really, no. It's much more about method, your approach. Plus motivation, sticking with it, diligence, the system you build for yourself, that plays a much, much bigger role than any supposed gift you were born with.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that because that's hopeful, isn't it?
Yeah.
The key idea seems to be this phrase, comprehensible input, CI. Finding content that's genuinely engaging. Fun, even.
Yes, fun. Because if it's unpleasant, if it feels like a total slog,
You're going to quit.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
you are. So that idea of fun, it's not trivial. It's actually serious business for making long-term progress. It keeps your brain open.
Okay, let's get into that. Comprehensible input. What does that actually mean in practice?
So CI, it basically means language input stuff you're reading or listening to that you can mostly understand. But crucially, it's just slightly beyond your current level.
That I+1 concept you hear about. Input plus just one step more difficult.
Exactly that. The sweet spot, maybe you understand, let's say, 80% without needing to look things up constantly. You're challenged, so you learn, but you're not so lost that you just throw your hands up.
Right. And what happens if you miss that sweet spot? If it's too hard, or maybe just really dull?
Well, that's when your brain's defenses kick in. If you're bored out of your mind or if it's so difficult it makes you anxious, your mental filters go up. Researchers call it the affective filter.
The affective filter, okay, like a barrier.
Exactly like a barrier. Or a bottleneck, like you said earlier.
Okay.
When that filter is high because of anxiety, boredom, maybe lack of confidence, the input, it doesn't get processed properly. It leaks out, never makes it to the part of your brain that actually acquires language.
So finding compelling stuff, interesting stuff, is the key to keeping that filter low.
Precisely. When the filter's low, acquisition can feel almost effortless. Your brain is just absorbing it.
Okay, so this foundation of fun and comprehensible input, it's psychological, really.
Deeply psychological.
The sources seem to be really pushing away from just finding safe or easy material and towards finding stuff that's almost addictive.
Yes, like scrolling through your favorite social media feed or getting lost in a good story. The language needs to become a welcome companion, something you want to engage with.
And that comes down to motivation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Motivation is the engine. Studies often talk about two types, instrumental and integrated. Instrumental is, learning for a reason, pass a test, get a job.
Practical goals.
Right. But integrated motivation, that's learning because you genuinely like the culture, the people, the music, the stories connected to the language. You want to be part of that world.
And I'm guessing the sources favor the integrated kind.
Heavily. Because if you genuinely enjoy engaging with the language and its world, you don't have to force yourself. You just do it. It lowers that affective filter naturally.
Makes sense. You stick with it through the tough spots, the plateaus, because you actually like it.
Exactly. The goal is finding a learning rhythm that fits into your busy life, making it feel less like study and more like, just living life, but in another language.
Okay, so if joy is the fuel, how do we start customizing? Because, let's be honest, a generic beginner textbook rarely feels addictive. It's made for everyone, so it's for no one in particular.
Right, and this is where adults have a massive advantage, customizing your vocabulary. It saves so much time.
How does that work?
Well, you start with the basics, obviously. The first 1,000, maybe 2,000 most common word families, that's your foundation. You need those.
High-frequency stuff.
Exactly. But after that, stop relying only on those generic frequency lists that tell you the next word is, aardvark, when you've never talked about aardvarks in your life.
Right. Not relevant to me at all.
Instead, you go on a personalized shopping trip for your brain. You actively seek out words related to your interests, your job, your hobbies. Use thematic vocabulary lists or books.
So if I'm into cooking, I learn saute, whisk, simmer early on. Not just generic verbs.
Precisely. Or if you're an engineer, you learn torque, voltage, circuit. If you're into gardening, photosynthesis, pollinate, topsoil, whatever matters to you.
You make the language immediately relevant to your own life and thoughts.
Yes. And that relevance helps bypass the brain's filters. The words stick better because they connect to things you already know and care about. And this ties into something fascinating the sources mention.
Oh, what's that?
It flies against the common wisdom, but adults actually tend to learn languages faster than kids on average.
Wait, really? Faster than kids? We always hear kids are like sponges.
They are sponges, in a way. They absorb through constant immersion. But adults, when the actual hours of exposure are compared, we have advantages.
Like what? Beyond just being able to focus longer.
It's about strategy and pattern recognition. We already know how to learn. We understand abstract concepts, like grammar rules. And crucially, we're much better at spotting patterns in the language.
Connecting the dots faster.
Much faster. We can see how a new grammar structure relates to something we already know, or figure out a rule from examples quicker than a child can. So when you customize your vocabulary based on your interests, you're leveraging those adult strengths, making the input hyper-relevant, achieving an efficiency kids just don't have.
Okay, that's really encouraging.
Oh.
So moving from that foundation to actually consuming authentic stuff. Let's talk reading. You said earlier our native vocab comes mostly from reading.
Vastly underestimated, yes. Think about it. A well-educated native speaker might know 15,000, 25,000, maybe even 35,000 word families. That's immense.
And we didn't learn all those from chatting with friends.
No way. Spoken language uses a surprisingly limited set of words, day to day. The research suggests that maybe up to 90% of those less common, more sophisticated words, we pick them up through reading, lots and lots of reading.
Wow. Okay, so the takeaway for language learning is read a lot.
Reading is probably the single most effective and often most painless way to acquire a massive vocabulary. And books, just ordinary, authentic books, are fantastic carriers of grammar. You absorb structures naturally.
But that leap from a textbook exercise to, say, a 300-page novel in another language,
Yeah.
It feels huge, terrifying even.
It does. Which leads us to a really practical strategy. Let's call it the familiar story approach.
Familiar story.
Yeah, for your very first attempt at reading a real book, pick one where you already know the story.
Like a translation of a book I love in English. Or a book that got turned into a movie I've seen a dozen times.
Exactly. Harry Potter, The Hunger Games, whatever. Because you already know the plot, the characters, what happens.
You're not burning mental energy just trying to figure out the storyline.
Right. You can focus all your attention on how the language is expressing those familiar ideas. It dramatically lowers the cognitive load. And that effective filter we talked about, less anxiety.
Makes total sense. Is that the whole strategy? Just pick a known story.
That's the start. But the really crucial step, the multiplier effect, comes from pairing the reading with an audiobook.
Reading the physical book or ebook while listening to the audiobook version.
Yes, simultaneously. The audiobook acts like your pacer. It pulls you along.
How does that help?
Several ways. First, it helps you read faster than you normally would. You don't get stuck quite as easily. Second, it prevents you from getting bogged down on every single unfamiliar word. The story keeps moving, so you tend to keep moving with it, inferring more from context.
Okay.
And third, maybe most importantly, it immerses you in the sound, the rhythm, the intonation of the spoken language.
Yeah.
Real native speech.
Because words we think we know from reading can sound totally different when spoken quickly, right? All mashed together.
Exactly. That's the broken word trap we need to talk more about later. Listening while reading helps prevent that. You're connecting the written form to the actual sound from the very beginning.
And audiobooks give you hours of that native speech.
Yeah, a typical novel audiobook is maybe 12, 15, 18 hours of continuous, well-pronounced native speech, perfectly synced to the text you're seeing. It's probably the easiest way to get comfortable with the flow of rapid speech.
Okay, that sounds powerful. But what if even a familiar story, in its original unabridged form, is still just too much? Too many unknown words, too complex sentences.
Good question. For people not quite ready for that jump, there's another great tool, adapted texts or graded readers.
Adapted text, you mean like simplified versions?
Exactly. They take classics or sometimes popular modern stories and rewrite them using simpler sentence structures and a controlled, reduced vocabulary for different learner levels, like A2, B1, B2.
So you still get a compelling story, maybe The Great Gatsby or Don Quixote, but the language itself is manageable.
Precisely. It allows you to engage with meaningful content without feeling completely overwhelmed. It lets you do that Deep work, the sources mention.
Deep work.
Yeah, one source put it beautifully. If you have the patience to really work with a text, break it down, analyze it, put it back together, really wrestle with it, you can learn an incredible amount from just one piece of writing. Adapted texts make that kind of deep engagement possible earlier on. You're focusing on core grammar and structure within your reach, not just constantly looking up obscure words.
Okay, so familiar stories plus audiobooks or adapted texts for tackling reading. Got it. Now let's switch gears to watching stuff. Film and TV. How does that fit in?
Film and TV are fantastic for listening comprehension, especially when you're moving beyond the very basics. The sources strongly recommend prioritizing movies and shows over, say, just listening to news, radio, or podcasts, at least initially.
Why movies and TV specifically?
Two main reasons. First, stories. You're usually watching for the plot, the characters. That naturally commands your attention more than, say, a dry news report might. But the biggest advantage is the visual context.
The visual clues. Seeing people's faces, their body language.
Exactly. Seeing what they're doing while they're talking. Those clues are incredibly valuable for figuring out meaning.
Like if someone points while saying something, you know they're talking about that thing.
Right. Or you see their expression. Are they angry, joking, sad? It helps you interpret the tone, the intention, even if you don't catch every word. One source described it as just like real life, only a bit more story-driven. The visuals turn potentially confusing speech into comprehensible input.
Okay, the visual help is clear. But this leads straight into the big controversial topic. Subtitles.
Ah, yes. The subtitle debate?
Every DVD, every streaming service offers them. English subtitles, target language subtitles. They seem helpful. What's the problem?
The problem, according to the research, is that if your main goal right now is to improve your listening ability, using subtitles is generally counterproductive.
Counterproductive. Even subtitles in the language I'm learning.
Yes, even those. The core issue is neurological. Reading is simply easier and faster for our brains to process than decoding spoken language.
Easier? Why?
Reading involves recognizing stable symbols on a screen. Listening involves decoding a continuous, fast-flowing stream of sound, dealing with accents, linked words, unclear pronunciation. It's a much heavier cognitive load. So when subtitles are present either in your native language, L1, or the target language, L2, your brain instinctively defaults to the easier path. It reads the text to get the meaning.
And it basically stops trying to process the difficult audio.
Pretty much. It thinks, got the meaning from the text, no need to struggle with those sounds, so you feel like you're understanding, but you're mostly understanding through your eyes. Your auditory processing isn't getting the workout it needs to improve.
You're training your reading skills, not your listening skills.
Exactly. You need to force your brain to rely on your ears.
Okay, strong argument for turning them off. But what if I turn them off and I'm just totally lost? That effect filter will spike. I'll get frustrated, and I'll probably just give up on the movie.
Totally valid concern. Which brings us to the next practical strategy, one that directly makes watching without subtitles possible. Pre-reading the plot.
Pre-reading, like read a synopsis before I watch.
Yes, but ideally a bit more strategically than just a quick glance. You'll find it much easier to follow a show or movie if you read a decent summary first.
How detailed.
A good approach is find the movie or the specific TV episode on Wikipedia, for example. Read the summary in your native language first, just to get the basic plot points and characters clear in your head.
Okay, got the gist.
Then, and this is the key part, switch the Wikipedia page to the target language version. Read the detailed plot summary there.
So I'm encountering the key vocabulary, the character names, the main plot events, all in the target language before I even press play.
Exactly. You're preloading your brain. This makes the input you're about to hear much, much more comprehensible. It brings it closer to that I+1 level.
Because I have the framework. I know what's generally happening.
Right. You're not scrambling to figure out both the language and the plot simultaneously. You can relax a bit, trust that you'll follow the main story, and focus your mental energy on decoding the sounds, listening to how things are actually said. It lowers the anxiety, keeps that filter down.
That makes a lot of sense. Pre-reading seems like a crucial step for making no subtitles actually work.
It really is. It bridges that gap.
Okay, so we've got powerful input strategies for reading and watching. But just letting all this language wash over us isn't enough for it to stick long-term, is it? We need to be more active.
Absolutely. Input is essential, but you need tools and techniques to actually drive that new vocabulary and grammar into your long-term memory.
And that's where things like flashcards come in.
Yes, but specifically, Spaced repetition systems, or SRSs, think of them as intelligent flashcards. Flashcards on steroids.
How are they intelligent?
They use algorithms based on the forgetting curve. They track how well you know each item and schedule it for review right before you're likely to forget it. It's incredibly efficient for memorization.
Combats that natural decay of memory.
Exactly. They supercharge the process. And the sources are really clear on this, there's a right way and a wrong way to use them.
Okay. What's the wrong way?
Just downloading a huge pre-made deck of, say, 10,000 common words created by someone else.
But that seems efficient. Someone else did the work.
It seems efficient, but it's often ineffective. Because SRSs are brilliant at reminding you of things you've already learned or experienced, they're not very good at creating that initial learning experience in the first place.
Ah, so the learning happens before the card.
Precisely. This is the power of creation. The most effective way to use SRS is to make your own flashcards based on the input you're consuming.
So when I encounter a new word in that movie I just watched or the book I'm reading, I make a card for it myself.
Yes. And don't just put the word in its translation. That's too shallow. You need to connect it to the context where you found it. Maybe add the sentence from the book. Or better yet, find an image using Google Images that represents the word for you. Or even better, connect it to a personal memory or feeling.
Make it meaningful to me.
Exactly. When you take that moment to actively process the word, link it to an image, a sentence, an emotion, a personal experience, that's the powerful learning moment. You're creating a rich, multisensory tag for that word in your brain.
It's not just an abstract symbol anymore.
Right. It has connections. It's much more memorable, much easier to recall later. The SRS then just helps solidify that initial meaningful learning.
Okay, the power of making your own cards. Got it. Now, circling back to something you mentioned earlier, the broken word trap. This sounds dangerous.
It can really hinder listening comprehension later on. A broken word is basically a word you learned first through reading. But because spelling in many languages, including English, isn't perfectly phonetic, you internalize an incorrect pronunciation in your head.
You guessed how it sounded and guessed wrong.
Exactly. Think of English words like choir, kernel, subtle, debt, or the classic off examples. Though, through, tough, thought, plow, all spelled similarly, all sound different.
Right. If I only read tough, I might try to make it rhyme with though.
Precisely. Then, months later, you hear a native speaker say the word correctly in conversation or a movie, and your brain just doesn't recognize it. You think, what was that word? Even though you technically know it from reading.
Creates this weird disconnect between your reading vocabulary and your listening vocabulary.
Huge disconnect. It causes a lot of confusion and frustration.
So how do we avoid creating these broken words?
Some early attention to pronunciation is really valuable. It saves time in the long run. If you make an effort to learn the sounds of the language well from the start.
You won't be surprised when you hear a word, just maybe by its spelling.
Exactly. And a fantastic tool for this, especially for languages with sounds that are very different from your native language, is the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet.
The IPA, that chart with all the funny symbols.
Yeah, it looks intimidating, but it's incredibly useful. It's essentially a universal system where each symbol represents one specific sound unambiguously.
So it cuts through weird spelling rules.
Completely. Using IPA charts or dictionaries alongside audio recordings from native speakers helps you pinpoint and practice the exact sounds from day one. Especially crucial for things like tones in Mandarin, clicks in Xhosa, or subtle vowel or consonant differences like those Korean examples in the source, pull, people, bull, sounds that your English-speaking brain might otherwise just filter out as the same sound.
You have to train your ear to even hear the difference first, then learn to make it.
Exactly. The IPA helps you do both.
Okay, good tip. What about other digital tools? Dictionaries, grammar guides?
The internet is obviously a treasure trove.
Right.
Free grammar explanations, frequency lists, amazing online dictionaries. For dictionaries, though, try to push yourself towards using a monolingual one, a dictionary in the target language, as soon as you can handle it.
Instead of just relying on translation dictionaries.
Yes. It forces you to start thinking within the target language. A useful intermediate step, a little hack. Look up the word in the monolingual dictionary. If you find the definition itself confusing, copy and paste that definition into Google Translate.
So I'm translating the explanation, not just the word itself.
Right. It nudges you towards understanding concepts defined in the target language's own terms, building those conceptual links faster.
Clever. Okay, we've covered input, memory, pronunciation, but the ultimate goal for many people is actually using the language, speaking, writing. Output, how does that fit in?
Output is absolutely essential. You can't just consume forever. You need to activate the language. And the internet makes this easier and more affordable than ever.
How so?
Platforms like italki, Verbling, and others connect you with tutors or language exchange partners all over the world, often for very reasonable prices. You can get one-on-one speaking practice.
Okay, find a tutor,
Yeah.
and then what? Just talk?
Talk, yes. But the key mindset shift here, maybe the most counterintuitive advice from the sources, is that the goal during your initial output practice is actually to make mistakes.
Make mistakes on purpose.
Mm.
But we spend so much energy trying to be perfect.
I know. Social pressure is huge, but think about it from a learning perspective. When you try to express a complex idea and you stumble, you use the wrong word, the wrong grammar, and your tutor corrects you, that correction is perhaps the most powerful, most personalized form of input you can possibly receive.
Because it's tailored exactly to the gap in my knowledge for something I was actively trying to communicate just seconds before.
Precisely. It's relevant, it's immediate, it's often emotionally salient. You feel that little aha or maybe oops moment. That makes the correct form stick incredibly well. You're essentially turning your own flawed output into high-quality, targeted input shaped by a native speaker. It's learning exactly how they would express your thoughts.
Okay, embracing mistakes as feedback, that's a big shift.
It's huge for progress.
So let's try to pull all this together. We've gone from the big picture, the psychology of motivation, keeping that effective filter low,
The importance of fun.
all the way to really specific, actionable strategies. Reading familiar stories with audiobooks, pre-reading plot summaries for movies, using adapted texts, making your own meaningful SRS cards.
Not using subtitles for listening practice. Getting the pronunciation right early with IPA.
Right. It seems the connecting thread through all of it is finding ways to make the process enjoyable and comprehensible, tailoring it to you. Pleasure really is the engine for progress.
It absolutely is. And remembering where native speakers get their huge vocabularies from, mostly extensive, enjoyable reading and other compelling input, when you consciously combine authentic media that you find genuinely interesting.
With these active, personalized strategies like creating your own memory aids, using visual cues, seeking out corrections.
You're basically replicating the natural acquisition process, but supercharging it with your adult learning advantages. You're hacking the system in your favor.
It really reframes the whole struggle, doesn't it? If you feel like you failed because you just don't have the language gift.
The sources strongly suggest it's probably not about the gift. It's about the method. You likely just need to tweak your approach to maximize enjoyment and minimize that anxiety. Find your way in.
And that point about adults potentially learning faster than children, hour for hour, with a good method.
Exactly. Think about the implication. If our native languages passively teach us tens of thousands of words just because we read books and watch things we like, what's the potential when we become intentional about it in a new language?
Choosing compelling, authentic, interest-driven media.
And making every movie you watch, every book you read, every song you listen to, a deliberate yet deeply pleasurable act of language acquisition.
The potential seems enormous.
It really is. It's right there for the taking.
A fantastic thought to end on. Find that authentic media you love, that book series, that TV show, and make it your next language project. The potential is waiting for you. Until next time, keep diving deep.